Good evening, everyone, and welcome. While we are waiting for everyone, there is one small little question which I've put up on the whiteboard there. So if you could just leave your responses on the chat box. There are no right or wrong answers here. Just leave your responses on the chat box. I assume we are all trainers, therefore we use activities when we run a program, either as a teacher or a trainer or a facilitator. So if you've used an activity, what's the purpose? Just leave your responses in the chat. Great, Debanjali, thank you for starting the entire process. Oh yes, Lakshmi, you're right. Sometimes we don't want it to become boring, right? So bringing in an activity brings in the energy. So true, so true. Engagement is a big one that's coming back so much. Yes. What else? What else could it be? Think about it. And while we are waiting for many more to join. That's interesting, Shravan. Yes, focus on learning, linking each other deeply, connecting between people. The second one I find bringing our true self through an engagement. So you're essentially saying we should be able to pull down our masks. Perhaps so, yeah, to bring out the hidden. That's interesting. Helps to connect. So true, Anu. I agree. It helps us connect, and it helps connect not just between the facilitator and the trainee, but amongst the trainees too. Yes, I totally agree. Engage has come back so many times. Efficient learning. Yep. We are looking forward to both effectiveness and efficiency. So yes, I agree. We are talking about that too. We will remember it for a longer time. It helps. Keeping a high energy level for effective learning. For all those who have done a lot of experiential learning, and we're going to talk about it, sometimes we also work with the energy levels. Sometimes we want the participants to move up in their energy, and then we suddenly will bring it down because it's an experience by itself. We're going to be talking about it. But yes, Debanjali, I'm so glad you talked about the energy level. Well done. Well done. Okay, that's a lot of responses coming in. Learning through activities we learn which are effective. And remember, yes, Glory, you're right. It makes it very effective. It's like, we had one more person say, like Lakshmi said, it helps us in our memory. I agree. It makes for effective learning. It helps in efficiency. Good. Well done. Great, Lyman, we're good to start whenever you say we're good to start. We've got so many responses coming in. So
sure, I think we are about 61 of us right now, and I think we are good to go. Meanwhile, let others keep joining in, and some of them are also viewing us live on Facebook. So I think, yeah, we are good to kickstart this. So I'm just sharing my screen. Just a minute. So thank you everyone for joining us on time. It has already been so interactive already, so I will not spend much time in speaking this. We will spend much of our time in the actual conversation of the day. So yeah, my name is Lyman Brahma, and I'm part of capacity building team, and I'm very extremely excited and happy to see each one of you here today. And yeah, today's session is about effective implementation of learning modalities in a virtual classroom. So a little bit about Trainer Tribe. So these master classes every Friday are organized by Trainer Tribe, which is an online learning community. And this is an initiative by Quest Alliance. And Trainer Tribe is on Facebook group. So please feel free to join us. I will share you the link toward the end of the session. Community members in the Facebook group, which is an amazing set of educators from across ecosystem. So please feel free to join us. I will share you the link toward the end of the session. So just a reminder here is please keep yourself on mute for the entire duration unless you are speaking. This is so that we do not get distracted by any background noise, and so that we can have a very engaging and very insightful session throughout. But feel free to use the chat section throughout. You can use it at any point of time to leave all your comments, questions, thoughts, anything. So make sure that it is buzzing throughout. In case if you're joining us for the first time, Quest Alliance is non-profit organization. We foster 21st century skills among young people by transforming learning ecosystems across the school to work continuum. And Quest learner focused programs are designed to meet key gaps in the school to work continuum by using educational technology, capacity building, partner collaborations, and advocacy to create impact that changes lives. Just a moment here to thank all our donors and partners for their continuous support and for actually spreading the word and getting you folks around here. So coming to the most exciting part of the day today, so we have Dr. Anuradha Rao, who is the founder and principal consultant of LED Solutions. We are very happy and we're extremely excited to have her today with us. And she comes with a very rich experience of over 30 years in learning and development and human resources. So ma'am, we are very excited and looking forward to learn what are the effective ways of implementing the learning modalities in a virtual classroom. Yeah, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Lyman. Thank you very much for this wonderful introduction and for having me here as part of the Trainer Tribe. Hello to everyone and to this wonderful group of trainers, of facilitators. And I think this is one place, this is one tribe, should I say, where I find myself so completely at home. I guess March of last year is when all of us felt a little bit unhinged, if I may use the word unhinged. There were ways in which we were training, we were facilitating, some of us teaching in classrooms, because we may not necessarily only be teaching in the corporate space or in any other space. We could also be in the classrooms, and we have a set way in which we send the message across, or we give information, we partake information, and suddenly the whole world changed. We had to look at the online space. And hence the classic train the trainer module that all of us have been so used to. We've been so completely hardwired with, there are certain things that we really want to do. I want to see my flip charts. I want to see my colored markers. I need to see all those sketch pens, and it's important for me to see all my tables put in a certain manner. All these things are so important for all of us. And suddenly all of it went way out there, and we had to create something which is so akin to the experience in a physical space, and we had to bring it into the virtual space, which kind of got me thinking. And I started wondering, what is it that I need to do as a trainer to create that experience, right? So let's start with a little story. Well, actually, it's not a story. Let's start with a small little incident. I'm going to actually play out an activity here. All right. And I'm looking forward to responses from each and every one of you, or rather as many of you. So I have this master class, which I am facilitating for a group of 89 facilitators. And I log in at around 4 o'clock. I am all prepared to set the entire piece in motion. I have a set plan in my head. And this is what I need to do. I have the whole thing right in my head. And I know that I want my whiteboard. I know that I want to figure out how to use the poll. I also understand that there's something called as a breakout room, and I want to start using the breakout room. All right, so the first thing that I want is to use the whiteboard, and we start the session at 4 o'clock. And there I have 88, now 88 participants who have logged into the masterclass. And I want to use the whiteboard, and the whiteboard's not opening. And I try it again, and it's not opening. And I keep trying it through at least 2 or 3 IDs that I have tried, and it just does not work. All right, the story till here, pretty much all of us are aware of. We have walked into a classroom and we want the projector to work and we want things to work, and it's just not happening. The same thing can happen even in the virtual space. And well, guess what? It's happening with me too. So I request someone to help me out. And then I say, oh, please, Lennon, help me out. And Lennon says, yes, ma'am, yes. And there is, in the presence of 80 and 90 odd people, I lose my temper and I speak to Lennon in a certain manner, right? Now, look at the situation that has come up. The situation that has come up is that I am running a masterclass. I have 90 and odd people who are listening into me. I want to use the whiteboard. I'm not able to use the whiteboard. Here is a person who is supposed to help me out, and it's just not happening. I lose my temper. Oh, this is terrible facilitator. She lost her temper and she gives it to Lennon. And my question to every one of you now is, what did you see? You saw something, right? What did you see? Anyone, everyone. What did you see? You saw something. No one? You didn't see anything at all? The facilitator losing temper. Okay, so I have responses coming in on the chat. The facilitator losing temper. Improper preparation. Yes, Chaitra, yeah, I would agree. I would perhaps say that too. What did you see? Yes, what else did you see? You saw improper preparation. You saw the facilitator losing temper. You saw reaction. You saw aggression. What else? That's it. You saw an absence of plan B. Yes. You saw not enough of understanding. Yep. This should have been considered in the program design. Absolutely. For all you know, there could be 1 or 2 here sitting here saying, has she lost it? Why did she even do something like that? Then I'm not setting a good example. Yep. That's what you saw. Unpreparedness. That's what you saw. All right. Interesting. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Rigidity, meeting disturbance. And that's what you saw. Yep. Those are potential responses. Those are potential things. Not enough respect. You saw me display disrespect towards Lennon. All right. Any more? Any more? Authority. Anita says, so Anita, you're telling me that you saw me show my authority on Lennon. Is that what you believe you saw me do? Okay. Any other responses that anyone can think of? Creating fear. Yes. Absolutely. And interesting, it's coming from Lennon. Lennon is saying, oh my God, I don't want to have this conversation with her ever again. Yes, creating fear. Yes, and to the situation. Great responses. But you know what? I'm going to now can everyone see my whiteboard? Just give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up. There is a reaction button that you just see there. Give me a thumbs up if everyone can see my whiteboard. Excellent. Yes, I can see some more responses. Not enough respect, confusion. Yeah, yes. Great. Excellent. You know what, guys? All the responses that you gave me is not what you saw. You saw me display certain behaviors, a certain facial expression that you could possibly see via my camera when I'm sitting in front of my laptop. You saw me and Lennon engage in a certain conversation that both of us were having at the time of the masterclass. You saw perhaps if Lennon's camera was on, let's assume for a minute that it was on, you saw Lennon's face change color. You saw Lennon feeling terrible about it. You saw me, perhaps you saw my face go completely red. And essentially what you saw is what we refer to as behavior. Okay, but and a behavior is something which is an objective data point. You cannot debate the fact that I called out to Lenin in the meeting. You cannot debate the fact that I used a certain kind of language with Lenin. All those cannot possibly be debated. But what you essentially gave me were inferences. Right? So when Lenin said, Anuradha, you displayed authority, he's essentially, he inferred, he put all these pieces together and he said, Anuradha, what you displayed was inference, right? So when somebody else said, Anuradha, that when Meghmala said not enough respect, for her clearly respect is something which is important. And she saw me displaying disrespect. And therefore, it was an inference that was made basis certain behavioral aspects that were displayed by the facilitator, right? And then we had yet another person who said, I did not have a plan B. And that person who said, I don't have a plan B is perhaps the individual who will always have a plan B. Guess what? Anuradha never has a plan B. But the person who said that having a plan B is extremely, extremely important, right? We work with behaviors and inferences right through our facilitation. I'm going to avoid using a training program here because not everything that we do may be a training program. It may not necessarily be a teaching forum. It may not necessarily be always learning intervention. It could just be a moment when I'm facilitating when I'm facilitating what we refer to as an experience, right? As facilitators, what we do is we facilitate an experience. We work with people's behaviors and we help them work with their inferences, get them to reflect on their experience, which perhaps over a period of time leads to what we refer to as change. And now everybody's asking the question, but Anuradha, you were going to talk to us about modalities. You were going to talk to us about learning modalities, right? Why are you talking about behaviors and inferences and experience and change and plan B and so on and so forth? Now, very quickly, in the last 10 minutes, what I essentially did was I ran an activity, right? I ran an activity and I did a host of things. I asked a host of questions. I said something. I tried to elicit a certain response and I narrated something within that activity in the form that in a manner that it would be experiential for you. Okay. The most important thing that we need to do as facilitators is for us to create an experience. That experience for the people, for our audience, could either be visual, it could be auditory, or it could be kinesthetic, right? Now, I have in the last 10 minutes, I said, created an experience, or rather attempted to create an experience through a narrative, through an incident, through an event. And the attempt was to create an experience with an attempt to do what? To tell you, listen, you know what? There is a difference between behavior and inference. And I did something. And I attempted to use the visual, a mix of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And now my question to all of you is, you can either speak, unmute yourself and share your thoughts, or you can put it in the chat, and I'm okay with any one of the responses. In whatever I did in the last 10 minutes, can you tell me what aspects were visual, what aspects were auditory, and what aspects were kinesthetic? So it starts with me narrating this whole thing about, you know, I'm going to do a master class and blah, blah, blah. And then I create this entire event, and then I display a certain behavior, and then Lenin comes in, and this whole thing has happened. So what was visual, what was auditory, what was kinesthetic? So someone, anyone, you can either leave it on chat, or you can unmute yourself and then voice your thoughts. Visual, which was screen not displaying, visual, the content on the screen, the whiteboard, narrating the story was visual. Oh, that's interesting. Swapna, you said narrating the story is visual. Why was it visual? Visual
Hello.
Yes, go on, Swapna.
Yeah. So when we start saying a story or narrating a story, we start visualizing that. So I think it comes under visual.
It's about how, and I like the words that you picked. You said it's about a story. You know, you're so spot on, and I'm going to pick it up later. Every activity is a story. That story has a hero, and I'm not going to be now sexist and say it has to be hero. Well, it has a main character. That character could be, well, a hero, heroine. It has a main character. And that main character needs to create a certain experience. So spot on, yes. So the story, the narration is auditory. Yes, I was using my voice, and I was using it in a certain manner. I was using a lot of my hands. I was using my gestures. You know, this is one thing that I've realized. For some reason, we believe that the system in front of us constrains us, it restricts us. If I was in a classroom, I would be moving up and down, I would be moving to and fro where the participants are, I would be using my hands, and I'm saying, you can do the same thing when you are in front of a system. Why can't you do that? So please go ahead. So it's the energy that you need to display, right? Yes, picture reading, white screen, my camera, my body language. Visual was my whiteboard. Auditory was the story. Kinesthetic was the body movement. Yes, 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 yes. Now, I think most of you have got, your gesture is kind of kinesthetic. Yes, Devanjali. The point is, when you see somebody else display a movement, for some reason in your head too, you are moving. And if you're very much part of that experience, there is that mirroring of that movement that happens, right? So spot on. Yes, my gesture can lead to a kinesthetic experience. Absolutely. Kinesthetic thought, Malti, what did you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand that. What did you mean by kinesthetic thought? Malti, are you there? Okay. I'm sure she meant something. And hopefully we'll get her back. A total physical movement, the way you express, yes. The one thing that we also need to understand, I think you're spot on, spot on, spot on, spot on. Most of you have got it. Kinesthetic is also the way I use my whiteboard, right? So when I am actually writing the word experience, And when I write the word E, you don't know what's going to happen next. So you are following that entire movement. Use the whiteboard. The more you use the whiteboard, and you actually do the writing using the whiteboard. And when you're writing, you are also creating the auditory experience of speaking when you are writing. There is this blend that happens of the visual, of the auditory, and of the kinesthetic, right? And that therefore creates what we refer to as an experience. Every activity is an experience. Think of any experience that you have had, whether it is sad or it is joyful, and it doesn't really matter which one. And if it is a memory, if that experience is a memory, there is a very high probability that you would have captured nuggets of the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic experience. Right? And if it is embedded in your memory, then there is a very high chance that all three would be there. You would see nuggets of all three. So, and I'm going to take a pause and then check if there are any questions, so that, you know, we're just going to avoid too much of a monologue at this point, at various points in time. As trainers, as facilitators, we all, you know, went through the train the trainer, and we were told, listen, we have learners who prefer visual learning, who have auditory learning preferences, who have kinesthetic learning preferences. So yeah, Anuradha as a learner would prefer a visual, you know, information being given to her in the visual space. Anuradha doesn't like auditory at all. It's unbearable. Kinesthetic, perhaps, but then I have somebody else who's auditory. And it becomes a little difficult for us to make sense of how do I work with a group size of, let's say, 104 that I have. It's a masterclass. I have 104 people listening into me. And this responsibility of Anuradha trying to create an experience which will include all three is a huge pressure. And therefore, I said, every activity is a story. That story has a main character. And that main character has a responsibility. The responsibility of the character is to ensure that the person, that is the participant, the learner, or the individual in the audience, will experience something. And herein lies the trick. If something has to qualify for an experience, stay with me here. If something has to qualify for an experience, it's extremely important for it to violate expectation. The role of the main character in my story is to create an experience. That experience will qualify for the word called experience only when it violates expectation. If the expectation is already built and I'm actually doing exactly what you expected, then how would it qualify for an experience? It's not an experience at all, which means I'm not going to reflect, which means I am not going to do anything different. Yes, Sujit, yes, I will repeat. I said that we have an activity, right? I decide to, let's say, run a program on listening skills, or run a program on, I'm taking something as well, listening skills is not simple, but I'll take that as an example, or the ability to ask questions. And enveloped in that, I put in an activity. Why? Because running a program on listening skills with 50 slides is not going to ensure that the person has picked up the skill of listening or asking questions at all. It doesn't guarantee that. In fact, it might just be detrimental. right? We need the person to practice. So we put in an activity there. The activity, there is a purpose for the activity, right? And the purpose of that activity, I said, is to create an experience. That experience could be to experience the fact that Anuradha till now has not been listening. She's only hearing. And I have to do something so that when Anuradha does that activity, she experiences the fact that, oh my God, I have not been listening till date. You know what? I've actually been hearing. Now, when that aha moment happens, that aha happens only when I violate expectations. So when I create an activity, when I design an activity, when I think of an activity and I develop it and I take it through every moment, I identify what is my main character. And in this case, my main character is the understanding that there is a difference between listening and hearing. I do something. Anuradha goes through that experience. And then she comes out with an aha moment. And what was her expectation? Her expectation was to tell Lenin or a Sanjana or a Shobha or a Malti, see, I told you, I listened. But no, that's not what happened. I have violated the expectations. And when we violate the expectation, the person suddenly stops. He pauses or she pauses. And in that pause lies the essence of the experience, right? So something happened at that point. What happened at that point could essentially be either visual in its essence, it could be auditory in its essence, or it could be kinesthetic in its essence, and it could differ. So you run the activity in exactly the same manner for 10 different people, but the feedback that comes to the individual could be either visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. I suddenly realize I've not been listening, I'm only hearing. And how do I know that? I realize it when the other person says, makes this face. That's visual. Or I realize it when the person says, listen to me now. That's auditory. It could be kinesthetic when the person just comes. I'm kind of exaggerating it a little bit, right? But you pretty much get the sense of what I'm saying. An activity is an experience. There is a main character. The main character's role is to create that experience. What's an experience? I have to violate expectations. And violating expectations happens here. So when I'm creating the activity, I see what is it that I'm doing that can appeal to a person visually. So I'm using my hands right now. I'm using my words in a certain manner. I'm using the whiteboard and I'm making and I'm writing and I'm getting you to experience the moment on the whiteboard as I am speaking. And that's kinesthetic, right? I see there are a host of things that are coming up on the chat. Maybe call it exceeding expectations. Debanjali, I'm not too sure if we can call it exceeding expectations. If there already is an expectation, yeah, I guess maybe we could. So experience it both ways, Debanjali, and then see if it works for you. You know, how it would work for you, right? Shravan says, how to then truly understand the expectations with so much diversity? Good. Which is why when we start a learning intervention, Shravan, we always ask the person what is his or her expectations. And I make it a point. I say, all right, I have my plan. I know exactly what I want to do, but you know what? I don't want to take you for granted. I want to know what is it that will make you believe that in the next 1 hour, in the next 3 days, in the next 4 hours, in the next 1 week, you believe it was a time well spent. And the way they speak, the way they present themselves itself will tell you what the expectations are. So as a facilitator, I need to be, my antenna needs to be up. I need to be literally scouting that space to see what is it that the person is saying visually, auditory or kinesthetic. Yeah. Okay, so what are some of the others? How do the presenters get the point of understanding is not experienced by the learning? So Ajita, I'm going to assume you're saying that if the person doesn't get the experience that is required, it is entirely possible it happens when we begin our career as trainers and we are still trying to figure out how to put in activities. If you are designing an activity with the goal statement as get the person, the objective of the activity is to help people understand the difference between open and close-ended questions. Let me tell you one thing, it does not qualify for an activity at all. It is pretty much a presentation that you're doing. But the minute you shift it and you say, I'm going to help the person understand, experience what question leads to what answer, right? So there is a question that you ask. That question, the way you ask it is not the way it is heard. And the way it is answered is completely different. So you have to work in that space. So Ajita, you will have to keep working with your activities. Could the activity be mixed of all the three? Sujit, absolutely. Your activity will need to have visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, all these three elements, right? So as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm using all three. There is the visual of me, I'm using my hands. There is the visual, I'm using my whiteboard. I'm using my whiteboard, right? And you can see the whiteboard on the screen. I'm using kinesthetic, I'm using my hands. I'm using my marker and I'm writing on my whiteboard. So yes, absolutely. I've got 108 people listening into me. And many of you, I don't even know who you are and what your preference is. And therefore, I need to be appealing to all three. How do the presenters get the point of understanding is not experienced by the learner? By asking the questions. The more questions you ask, Ajita, the better it is. I have certain rules to the game when it comes to asking questions. Typically during a debrief, I avoid doing three things. I don't ask the why question. So when the person says, I didn't understand, the one thing we don't do is we don't say why. Two, we don't ask close-ended questions. So I will not ask, so Ajita, did you understand what the brief was? Well, you know what? Ajita got the brief, she did it, and she still didn't get it. So why are you repeating yourself? And the third thing is we don't ask questions in the form of suggestions. So I ask a question and say, okay, Ajita, what is it that you made of this activity? Which means that the assumption here is you made something of it. It couldn't have gone completely down the drain. And then I weave that experience back into the overall narrative. Yeah. Having a goal statement for an activity is great. I think it's important. It's essential. It keeps us on track. But if we're going to hold on to the goal statement, it's like, holding on to a crutch. It's not going to help completely in creating an experience. Great. So by the learner, wonderful. What is the best of all three for learners? Ritesh, there is no best. There is no best at all. You make something auditory for me, I find it unbearable. There are many people who find auditory books. You have these audio books now as something wonderful. I can't handle it. I don't understand how people can bear to listen to audio books. I like visual. I love visual. And after that is kinesthetic. So see, Ajita says, I love audiobooks. Oh, Ajita, I cannot handle it. But think about it this way. I'm a facilitator and I need to use my auditory skills to send a message across, to convey a certain point. And therefore, I need to figure out how to use my auditory skills. So there is no best, Ritesh. There is none. I wish I could say it is visual. You know why, right? But no, that's not it at all. It can be a mix of all. Okay, I'm going to take a pause here and then check if there are any questions. And the reason I want to stop here and take a pause is because this concept of experience is important. This concept of violating expectation is something very essential. We get so completely bogged down by creating a lesson plan and having a plan A and having a plan B that we don't realize many a times. And I know I'm making a very generic statement. My sincere apologies for making this very generic statement, that when I'm preparing a lesson plan, there is a very high probability that I'm sacrificing experience for structure. A structure supports the experience. The structure is not the experience. Yeah. Okay. So from Ajita, I have a query. In the pre-recorded e-learning sessions, how do we manage involving dexterities, chalkboard-based drawing? Ah, yes. Okay. So if it is pre-recorded, Ajita, you know, so we have blended learning, we've got hybrid learning, we've got e-learning. I recently conducted a program for an organization, and I said, before you come into the classroom, I'm going to request you to go through this e-learning, these 2 modules, respond to these 2 or 3 questions, and then you come back. So now what we're doing is, it's called flipped. It's called a flipped classroom. So I give them the material at the start. I get them to experience the new material in whatever shape, size, format that is available right now. And I also myself that, listen, Anuradha, because they come with different varying experiences. When I say experience, I'm talking about work experience and also of the quality of experience. They're going to respond to it differently, and you'll have to be prepared for that. So in a flipped classroom, what happens is people come with the expectation sometimes, not all the times, of defending their experience or questioning what has happened. So then you weave an activity, you create an activity, you develop an activity where the person gets to experience the blend of the new with the old. So if it is pre-recorded, Ajita, to cut a long story short, see who your audience is. What is the purpose of the program? What's the mindset that they are working with? And then you weave in the questions that will help you navigate that experience. Does that help at all, Ajita, or am I just rambling to your question? Okay, Ajita says, can you, not helping, sorry. Okay. I'm going to attempt it one more time. Violating expectations. Can you please explain with it one more time? When I, all right. We all do this, right? When a program starts, we do something called as an icebreaker. And what's devastating for me is when the trainer walks in or the facilitator walks in and says, great, excellent, let's start with an icebreaker. And you want to cry after that. And I'm saying, can you create an activity in such a manner that you suddenly, so that the participants suddenly realize that, oh, actually what happened just now was an icebreaker. I got to know the person sitting next to me. I got to know a little more about it. right? And that's that. To me, violating it's the crudest form in which I can explain what violating expectations is. And if I don't violate expectations, let me also tell you that the participant will sit there and will constantly be judging the content. It happens any which way. Online games. Okay, how to really ensure that we capture the felt experience both of the participant and as a facilitator. Shravan, I doubt you can capture all of it. Right now, I think I can get a sense of how the group is responding. This group, this entire group of 106 participants is responding to what I'm saying. But can I get a sense of what every one of these 106 is experiencing? I doubt it. And therefore, I will have to go with an educated guess. So the more you design, you develop, you implement, and you debrief, and you see and you reflect on what the people have said, is when you will get a sense of whether the experience has been captured. To put it in any other form, and maybe I'm kind of philosophizing the whole thing. It's about reading a book or watching a film. If there's a book or a film that you keep going back to, it's not because you like the story, but it's because of what the story does to you. And I'm saying, stop and figure out what is it that the story is doing to you. The minute you begin to reflect on that, you will also be able to take that learning into your training, into your learning space. Yeah, we currently do a debrief with the facilitator based on what went well, what should be better, what could be done better, but how do you improve it? You listen to what the person said, and you work on it. A little while back I said so you could ask a certain question. So for example, let me give you an example. The question that I asked the individual is, what did you learn? So when I ask the participant the question, what did you learn? The question that is heard is, what did you learn not to do? I learned that I should not be thinking when I am listening. Arey Baba, I said, what did you learn? I did not ask what it is that you learned not to do. Instead, let's alternate the question. So when I were to ask a Shravan, what did you achieve in this, in the last 30 minutes? It gets Shravan to stop for a moment. The questions of what went well, what could I have done better, or the classic stop, continue, and start are expectations that are already built in. Violate it. Take the question to a completely, totally different level. And therefore, I'll ask Shravan, so Shravan, tell me, what did you achieve in this, in the last 30 minutes or in the last 15 minutes? It will get you to stop. And the minute you stop, you reflect. The minute you reflect, you go through the experience. And that experience has moments of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Anuradha, you said this, you did this, and this is what happened. There is a rationale that gets built into the whole piece. Did that help at all, Shravan? Okay, Ajita says, thank you for attempting to explain it with one or more example. We'll try the clue. Yes, Ajita, the more you try, it's going to help. I'm not sure if I'm sticking my neck out by saying this, but I think I'm going to do that. The more you practice of violating your own expectations, of saying, you know what, I've already done this, let me do something more. Trust me, when you're ready to create a different experience for yourself, you will, by definition, help create a different experience for your participants. But there is a very strong tendency in many of us, me included sometimes, when I walk in and say, you know what, this activity is time tested. So let me just do it this way. So if it is time tested, the responses are also, my friend, time tested. Let me tell you that. Okay, Shravan, thank you for this input. It truly made me think, yes, thank you, Shravan. It's interesting. All right, we have about another 10 minutes. Any questions that any of you would like to ask? You can keep putting your questions on the chat, but you know, the way I also gave the questions to Shravan about what is the question that you ask, you hear, and how can you shift the question itself. What would you do differently is another question that we keep asking all the time, every time. So when I ask the question, what would you do differently or the next time? The question that is heard is, what went wrong this time? Why? Because my brain is programmed for threat. So I will always talk about the word not. It's never about what I will do. So shift the question and say, what would you do the same next time? At what point did you feel that you were on the right track? You have to pose your questions, which will get your participants to pause. And that's important. That's the critical part. That creates, that impacts the participants' modalities. Yeah. Okay. Ajita says, would you mind posting this question to the audience to have a query in the pre-recorded e-learning sessions? How do we manage group discussion involving finger dexterities, Lego-based games, chalkboard-based drawing and pointing out the parts, etc.? Yes, this question is for the audience. I am struggling with the answer too, Ajita. I'm struggling to understand the question a little bit. Is it possible for you to get off mute and help me understand it better? Would you be comfortable doing that, Ajita? Please. I can't hear you. So if you have to get off mute.
Hi, Ajita, you could unmute yourself now.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Anuradha. My question is, in a pre-recorded e-learning session, what am I depriving my participants and also my facilitator? A, some finger-based dexterities which involves a group to assemble some the building block games, if you recall, which is the Lego-based games which I mentioned, the building block kind of activities which we give to groups.
Yeah.
This I find it. This I'm unable to integrate into my recording. This is what I'm struggling. Number one.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
Number,
let me. Sorry. Let me just paraphrase and check if I've got your question right. You're saying that in something which is pre-recorded, am I as the facilitator depriving the learner of one of the modalities? Is that your question?
yes, partly yes. My question is bang on. Bang on, like this is an activity which is based on groups where in a live classroom, I will make the participants to come together and I will give some activities which are based on building blocks to make it much more simple for everybody to understand. The building blocks, which kids used to play, right? This is some kind of a building block kind of a game. But with the higher engineering tools which we give with them to play. This is part of one of my session, which I'm unable to integrate into my e-learning modules. Am I clear?
I think so. I think so. And I hope I've got it, Ajita. I'm not going to jump the gun. My guess is the challenge in integrating in a scenario that you're talking about is the kinesthetic piece. Because in the e-learning, the visual and the auditory comes in. It's very rare that when I am going through an e-learning module, for example, I could be doing that through a Coursera or anywhere else, I will pull out a paper, pen, and I will actually be doing something depending on what the participant is saying. I think the challenge is the kinesthetic piece. So at the end of every session, it might be worth a try to figure out what the activity that can be created that requires a person to to use his kinesthetic or tact, something which is more tactile.
Which means should be a one-on-one session is what it, one-on-one meaning a live
It could be a one-on-one. It
Yeah,
could be
I'm
a
getting
one-on-one, or a person does something and submits it, but submits it on paper pen.
No, it's not a paper pen. I think while I'm asking you, while you are giving me the answer, I'm getting the answer to it. But there is a limitation when I'm now exploiting the e-learning, when I'm making a group of people who are in different locations. This deprives me of making them to come together as a group and try some building blocks kind of a game. This is something which is technology. Maybe that's why I was wondering if someone else in the audience, if they've tried and if they've tested, probably I thought I would get an answer. I have done sessions where, sorry, shall I complete?
Please.
We have done sessions where the trainer makes different rooms and makes them speak to each other, where that does not involve any physical games, right? But everything is only auditory, as you are telling. So this is a limitation, probably.
Yes, and I'm sorry I interrupted twice, Ajita. My apologies.
No problem.
Even when you get them into breakout rooms, you may want to think, sometimes it always helps when you put the ball into the participants' court and then say, guys, what is it that you can actually create by 6 of you getting into a breakout room, which I can see that you have created.
Okay. Thank you.
Put the ball in their court. And sometimes you realize that when you push, and if they're so completely involved in the content, they will come up with some of the craziest ideas.
It helps me in a manner.
Yeah, but it doesn't help you completely. I hear you.
No, it's not about you helping or anybody helping. It's by design. I think we can't get together physically. See, because when we take a poll, that has enabled us to instantly get the ideas from thousands of participants, and I can understand the pulse of how many percentage of people feel in which quadrant. That is an enablement. But this is probably the e-learning industry should come out with an answer or something. Sorry if I've taken much of time.
No, not at all. I'm hoping that artificial intelligence will help answer that, but we have a long way to go on that. Okay, it may be difficult. Aruna has a question. It may be difficult to do a group kinesthetic activity, but the activity could be modified so that each does the activity and then compares notes on final results achieved by each one. Yes, Aruna, you know what? It may be difficult, but it may not be impossible. You may want to redefine what is a kinesthetic activity in the virtual learning space. Yeah. Yes, I gathered that, Aruna, that it was a response to Ajita. I gathered that. Yes. Any other questions that anyone has before we close the session?
Can I ask a question?
Of course, please, Lata, please go on.
Okay, now as we know, the training industry has moved from a PPT to more of an activity-based experiential kind of training, what we are doing right now. So my question here is, as we know, the audience or our trainees, the attention span is hardly 6 to 7 minutes. After that, they start getting deviated.
Yes.
So how do we keep them motivated to the agenda of the training?
Very tough question. I'm going to answer the question a little differently, Lata, and I'm going to take the liberty of saying this here. I can help you understand what are some of the things that we can do as facilitators in a virtual learning space that will hopefully keep people alert and in the moment. But whether it will keep them motivated, I'm not too sure. I really don't want to bite off more than I can chew.
Okay.
Which means that, and this is the trick, the attention span in the virtual space is that if I don't get my participants to do something every 3 minutes, 3 minutes is like the max, I've lost them. I've lost
Right.
them completely, right? So and in this 60 minutes, I attempted as much as possible. So when we started the session, I left a question there and I said, respond to the question. And I got to get them to respond to something every 3 minutes.
So it's basically like we need to keep them interactive, we need to keep them engaged all through the session.
Yes.
So
yes.
that's the key over here.
Absolutely. And if you've kept them engaged for 60 minutes, I think, Lata, that's great. After 90 minutes, it's extremely difficult to get a person to sit. I mean, I find it difficult to sit for 90 minutes and put forth. It's different in a physical classroom. In a virtual classroom, it can be exhausting, mentally exhausting, right? And plus, there is this added thing about every 3 minutes. So it's a tough one.
Ms. Anuradha, if you allow, I can also add on to this question, I think to Lata. Can I please?
Please, yes, of course.
Lata, I would like to share, thank you, Doctor. Lata, I would like to share my experience as Ms. Anuradha is also pointing out correctly. We more challenging in terms of the e-learning modules, because the better your USP of self-learning mode, self-paced learning is the bigger USP. At the same time, it becomes the risk or threat also for the e-learning models for the completion. So what we do is we ensure that we have many questions, many in the sense depending upon the module, we insert a lot of questions into that session. So that is one thing which we try to do in the e-learning model. And we also give a lot of other readings in the model. I'm talking about the pure play technical programs, right? In terms of the live webinar or I wouldn't say webinar, a proper online mode, Teams or a Zoom call like what we are doing now, one-to-many, maybe around 30 to 20 to 30 participants. We involve a lot of polls. One poll, then another activity, then another experience sharing. So we constantly keep Thank you for allowing me to share my thought.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to the end of the hour.
Thank you, Anuradha, and thank you everyone for making it so interactive. There is actually one more question by Azim Durrani, but I am quickly launching a poll, requesting everyone to please take this poll and give us a valuable feedback. Meanwhile, we can take the one more question by Azim Durrani.
Sure, Azim. Oh, yes, I see it on the chat. As informed by you, the plan kind of kills the experience. So what's the important factor to be incorporated to keep that live? If that was the message that I sent across, Azim, let me apologize. My intent was not to say that the plan kills the experience. My intent was to say that if the plan is the objective, if the plan is what I am out to implement, then it will kill the experience. The plan or the structure will only support the experience that I'm trying to create, right? And therefore, the manner in which I pull the entire elements of the activity is what will create the experience. The closest that I can come to is like having a recipe, which is your plan, and actually cooking it. So I could have a great recipe, but if I'm not able to bring the ingredients together and then present it in a manner that it has to be presented, then the experience is lost. Does that help at all, Azim?
Yes, ma'am. Sure. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, great. Thank you everyone. Thank you. I can see a ton of thank yous coming in. Thank you, Malti. Thanks, Azim. Thanks, Arun. Thank you, Nitya, Ajra Begum. Thank you all.
So here is the trainer tribe link. So inviting everyone to please join us there. It is a wonderful community of 3,000 plus educators across all ecosystems. So it will be great to have each one of you there and share our learning experiences. And yeah, so we still have 2 minutes for the poll. Meanwhile, in case anyone is sitting with any opinions, any thoughts, anything that you would want to share from this session, please feel free to use the chat box or unmute yourself and share it.
Great. Lyman, Lennon, everyone, I just wanted to take a minute and thank you all for this opportunity. It was a great interaction, some amazing questions that came from the participants, and I had a wonderful time, a great 60 minutes. Thank you for creating this experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending your Friday evening with us, and the wonderful people, everyone attending here today who made it so interactive, so engaging, interesting questions. In case if anyone would still love to have this conversation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I take a minute, please, to the facilitator? I mean, to the organizer otherwise.
Thank you, ma'am, very much for the session.
Thank you.
I think.
Thanks, ma'am.
Who's the organizer here, please?
I think it's Lyman and Lennon, Ajita.
Oh, Lennon.
Yeah, hi Ajita, please go ahead. We can hear you.
Thank you, Lennon. Lennon, the link which you've given is a Facebook link. Probably I've completely cut out of Facebook. Is it possible if you have if I try Trainers Tribe, I'll be able to reach you, right? Hope your presence is not limited to Facebook.
Currently, it is limited to Facebook, but we are definitely in the verge of exploring other social media handles too. So maybe in the next 1 week or 10 days, you will see us on Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. Yeah.
All right, LinkedIn helps. Right, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Lennon.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ajita. Thanks for making your time.
Thank you.
And we will keep you posted once we are live on other social media handles.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, and have a great Friday evening. We will see you for the next masterclass with another exciting speaker and an even more exciting topic. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Bye.